Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Azam Khan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. The city's newest bridge is partially closed because of strong winds amid a cold snap. A daring bid to abduct a woman in broad daylight is foiled. And a 4-month-old girl is recovering after a successful heart transplant with an organ donated from the mainland. Strong winds have forced the authorities to close the pedestrian and cycling paths on the newly opened Cross Bay link connecting Chung Kwan-o and Kwun Tong. A scaffolding on a building in Wong Tai Sin was also damaged due to the extreme weather. Chloe Fung reports.
Just a week after it opened, the Cross Bay link connecting Chung Kwan-o and Kwun Tong was closed to pedestrians and cyclists shortly after 9 a.m. The decision was made after the wind speed reached 40 kilometers per hour, with the strong monsoon signal in force. The observatory warned of strong winds from the north and advised people to stay away from coastal areas due to rough seas. The Transport Department urged cyclists to change their route if they were heading toward Lohas Park or To Kan Lane. Rental bikes were blown over by gusts, but some residents braved the extreme weather before turning back as the pedestrian pathways were also closed. A woman suffered head injuries and was sent to hospital for treatment after being hit by a falling tent in Causeway Bay. Police on the scene suspect the tent blew away from a nearby rooftop due to strong winds. The strong wind also damaged part of the scaffolding on the building in Wong Tai Sin. The section, measuring 30 meters by 10 meters, was still teetering as police rushed to seal off Mingfeng Street. Owners of 5 vehicles parked on the street were asked to move their cars. With the cold weather warning in force, the observatory said the temperatures will drop sharply to about 10 degrees tonight in urban areas and a few degrees lower in the new territories. Gusts of 81 kilometers were recorded on Wackling Island at noon. People are advised to remove plants and other items stored outside as strong winds will continue this weekend. Chloe Fung, HKIBC.
An attempt to kidnap a woman in broad daylight was foiled, but she was left badly beaten. The drama happened this morning after the 32-year-old woman visited her husband in Stanley Prison. 3 men approached and assaulted her before trying to force her into a minivan. Her friends and relatives tried to intervene, and correctional services officers were alerted. But the attackers grabbed the woman and fled. Police intercepted their van near Ocean Park and rescued the victim. The woman was sent to hospital suffering from several injuries. She allegedly owed people $500,000. 3 men and a woman inside the van were arrested. Another 10 people have been convicted of rioting during the 2019 Polytechnic University siege. 8 others charged with the same offense have pleaded for leniency. Katrina Lau reports.
At the height of the 2019 social unrest, hundreds of protesters occupied the Polytechnic University and gathered in Yau Ma Tei and Jordan nearby. 11 people, including singer Lester Chong, were arrested for rioting. They had pleaded not guilty earlier. In the district court today, Judge Josiah Lam found 10 of them guilty. They will be sentenced early next year. 1 defendant was acquitted. Over at West Kowloon Magistracy, 8 other people charged for rioting in the same area presented their pleas for mitigation. The court adjourned its verdict until the end of the month. Police say out of the 10,279 people arrested during the social unrest, 2,915 have been taken to court and 1,391 have been convicted. Katrina Lau, HKIBC.
Lawmakers have condemned Google after the U.S. firm cited technical limitations when generating a search for the correct Chinese national anthem. Speaking on a cable TV talk show, legislator Tommy Chung said the search engine's response was absurd. He said under the Powers and Privileges Ordinance, Google can be summoned to the Legislative Council to explain its actions. In a worst-case scenario, the company would be asked to withdraw its services from Hong Kong, Chung added. Deputy Chief Secretary Chuk Wing-hing criticized Google for being unprofessional and blasted the company for what he called its uncooperative attitude. Chuk said the government will be filing a formal inquiry with Google soon. A 4-month-old girl suffering from heart failure has undergone a successful transplant at the Children's Hospital. The organ was delivered from the mainland in the city's first such arrangement. Chloe Fung reports.
The hospital authority made an urgent appeal last month for a donor heart to save a 4-month-old girl diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy. She had to rely on medication and a ventilator to stay alive. Exactly 1 month later, Lizzie Hay underwent a successful transplant with a heart from a donor on the mainland in the first such case in the city. Doctors at the Children's Hospital were notified last night that a suitable donor had been found. The heart was from a boy who died from serious head injuries suffered in an accident. Officials rushed to send the organ across the border, and the operation was completed early this morning. The girl is now recovering in the intensive care unit. Simon Tang of the hospital authority said the case marked the smallest heart transplant the city has ever seen.
We all understand that in order to accomplish this task, it is not easy at all, because it is very difficult to identify a suitable heart to be transplanted into a 4-month-old girl in Hong Kong. And so that's why, out of goodwill, the National Health Commission, they use their robust mechanism and help to identify the right organ for our 4-month-old child. And we should be grateful to that.
Tang stressed that both sides observed the proper protocols. Hospital officials said the girl's parents expressed gratitude to the donor's family. Chief Executive John Lee hailed the successful surgery as a major medical achievement between Hong Kong and mainland medical teams. Chloe Feng, HKIBC.
An independent review committee has submitted a preliminary report regarding alleged child abuse incidents at the Po Lung Kok in Causeway Bay. The committee recommended that training and manpower management be improved. Katrina Lau has the story.
After incidents of child abuse came to light at the Po Lung Kok Residential Child Care Center, the charity set up an independent review committee headed by former Law Society President Melissa Pang. 3 former care providers at the charity's foster home for children in Causeway Bay were suspected to be involved. Their trial was adjourned to March, as Eastern Magistracy is still reviewing over 50,000 hours of footage and additional documents. At a preliminary report conference today, Pang reiterated that the charity's board adopts a zero-tolerance policy towards child abuse. She added that the alleged abuse cases were rare incidents, but the organization should not overlook manpower and training inadequacies. Since October, the committee interviewed 18 people, including staff, volunteers, and parents. They found that workers were often overworked, with some caregivers managing up to 8 children at a time. The report indicated that a lack of sufficient training and improper manpower allocation were to blame. The committee recommended that staff be given more practical training rather than textbook knowledge, especially if they are to care for children with special needs. Katrina Lau, HKIBC.
Many residents lined up at the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge to travel to Macau following quarantine relaxation. Starting today, Hong Kongers, as well as Taiwan and overseas travelers, can isolate at home or in a hotel of their choice for 5 days instead of a quarantine facility. Some of the 10 shuttle buses that run from Hong Kong to Macau every day were fully packed. Residents had been waiting for nearly 3 years and were happy they could finally visit friends and relatives. Arrivals will be given a red health code, which will change to amber on day 3 before turning to green on day 5 when they complete their isolation. Red and amber code holders are allowed to go outdoors or to work, but will be forbidden from social gathering. Overseas, never has Twitter been trending so much since it was taken over by Elon Musk in October. The owner of the social media giant has taken his fight with the press to the next level by suspending Twitter accounts of prominent journalists from big media organizations. The self-proclaimed twit-in-chief continued his crusade against mainstream media as more journalists saw their Twitter accounts go dark without any explanation. The new suspensions came after Elon Musk banned one account which tracked the flight path of his private jet. But he lifted the suspensions after holding a Twitter poll on whether the accounts should be reinstated. The saga has even triggered the United Nations to chime in and express concern.
We're very disturbed by the arbitrary suspension of accounts of journalists that we saw on Twitter. Media voices should not be silenced on a platform that professes to be a space for freedom of speech.
The growing rift between Musk and media organizations have spurred debates on press censorship.
When you create an environment in which essentially you're saying journalists I don't like can't report, it's not just those journalists from those bigger organisations who are effective, it creates a knock-on effect. It creates an enabling environment in which frankly governments feel enabled and empowered to shut down reporting.
Coincidentally, the account suspensions come at a time when large media organizations, including the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, and BuzzFeed, have announced mass layoffs to cut costs, triggering tensions between the workforce and executives. The death toll in a landslide that buried an unlicensed campsite in Malaysia has risen to 23. More than 90 people were camping at the site in Batang Kali, 50 kilometers north of the capital Kuala Lumpur, when the tragedy occurred early on Friday morning. An overnight search for 12 people still missing was hampered by bad weather. More than 400 workers were combing through a pile of rubble that's believed to be 8 meters deep. 6 children were among the dead. On to the weather now. If you thought today was cold, be prepared for tomorrow when the mercury will plunge to 8 degrees in urban areas. It will remain chilly, but fine until midweek. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Saturday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Azam Khan. Good night.